Welcome to this episode of our program, Daily Debate. As usual, we will be discussing an important debate. Today, there is no more important debate than this announcement that was made 2 days ago, or rather 3 days ago, and ending the state of emergency. On Monday, the president has ended the state of emergency nationwide, which was declared after 2 terrorist attacks on churches in April 2017. The president said that revoking the state of emergency means Egypt has become an oasis of security and stability in the region. He added that the decision is a reflection, of the Egyptian people's sincere and faithful participation in all development and construction efforts. On his Facebook, President Sisi said, "I recall the sacrifices of our heroic martyrs, without whom we would have never reached security and stability." Intellectuals, judges, state institutions, human rights activists and parliamentarians have praised President Sisi's decision, describing it as a boost for human rights and proof of the state's stability. In a statement, Egypt's National Council for Human Rights hailed President Sisi's decision, calling it an important step towards bolstering, implementing and protecting human rights. The council added that the decision sends a message to Egyptians that the state is determined to exert all efforts to strengthen human rights. It is an integral part of an honest and brave implementation of the content of the National Strategy of Human Rights, according to the National Council for Human Rights. This strategy was definitely launched by the president in mid-September. The decision was also of global significance and positively impacted human rights and investments in the country. It was also hailed and praised by many of world countries. We'll be speaking about that in our first segment before we move on to our next segment, which is Egypt transformation towards digitalization. Digitization, and we'll speak about this in our second segment. Before we move on with our discussion, first let's have this very short break and we'll come back for discussion. Yes, it's an all-out strategy for human rights, and that was announced in September. Returning back to our first segment and the announcement, or this move that Egypt has 3 days ago announced by the president. A step that was really hailed by all Egyptians, everyone that I have already seen or discussed with. It was really very much praised. To discuss this issue and to highlight the issue, we have with us over the phone General Hamdi Bekheit, a strategic expert. Good evening to you.
Good evening to you and your audience.
Thank you so much. And let me here take your reading to the lifting of the emergency state, or the state of emergency. First, let me here understand from you, what is exactly the state of emergency? Why was it applied, and for which exact reasons?
The state of emergency has spread all over the country after the revolution of 25th of January, and still continued and accompanying the development of what had happened. We're not going to speak about what had happened, but we mean to highlight that these threats that coming from inside and outside the country has made a necessity to make the law of emergency and give a more comfortable movement for the security elements to control the situation and the theater. That's because we don't know who was on the ground, who was coming from outside and coming from inside to outside it was a problem. So the emergency, the law of emergency could make a kind of comfort or helping or a tool to help the security elements to control the country and control the movements, even to face these threats coming from outside the country and those who are ignited from inside the country.
Right. Indeed, it is, and it is a state of law that is, or that gives the president some of the abilities to be able to put in order to secure the country from any jeopardy and from any security threats. Getting back to this announcement and ending the state of emergency, and how or what significance, or how do you think it has significance nationwide? Before I ask you about the messages.
I would like to say that this makes a kind of confidence between the political command and the people themselves. Even it spreads over the country a kind of trust between all the components of the society. At the same time, the security elements could practice their roles and their missions in a more comfortable way, expecting that they are dealing with the citizen in a more comfortable and more and better environment. At the same time, we can say that we could achieve a high progress to control the situation in fighting terrorism all over the country, especially in Sinai. So these signs of security and peace and stability that's spreading all over the country gives the political command a sign to take such a decision in that time.
Let me here ask you, General Bekheit, in mid-September, the president announced the National Strategy for Human Rights. It is a pure Egyptian written strategy for the human rights as we see it from the Egyptian perspective. Now, this move gave a kind of impetus to such a strategy. When we are speaking about messages, I guess that there are several kind of messages that were given by such a move. How do you view the messages that were sent by Egypt to the whole world through such decisions and through such strategy?
First of all, I would like to say that we can't hide our heads in the sand and say we are doing the best message or spreading the best environment for human rights. This is a country that's facing a lot of threats, as I told you, from inside the country and outside the country. So this is why there is a lot of rights to the political command to face just the threats with all available tools. One of them was the law of emergency. Let's go to another thing. National security passes through the human rights. And if we are achieving national security, we are achieving the human rights in its peak goal. And if we could analyze what is the relation between human rights and national security, I would say that national security is achieving everything for every citizen: his education, his health, his health care, habitants, future, everything that we are better economy, better securing by military and police forces that costs a lot. And at the same time, it achieves the citizens' rights to live in a secured and settled community. This is the relation between the national security and the human rights. So there is no difference between them, but the national security comes first. Indeed. Taking that what I have said and apply it to what comes out from foreign NGOs and foreign committees and foreign organizations speaking about what's going on in Egypt about human rights. I would say that most of these communities and organizations and NGOs are playing a political role to represent or to make a kind of threats to the command and make them work in an unstable environment. So I would appreciate when the decision comes from our country and from our political command and in the suitable and better and the best environment that we could see it as it is. So this is the best decision. No one can dictate on us how to function our country, how to take decisions. When we take decisions, this is not proper. They are not living our situation. They are not living our environment.
They can't see perspectives or the situation from our perspectives and from our eyes.
Indeed, that's right.
Indeed, that's General right. Hamdi Bekheit, strategic analyst. We thank you so much for being with us and for your input here. Let me say that this is a decision that was hailed by all Egyptians. It came out after the lots and lots of developments, security threats, and definitely we cannot ignore or we cannot end such a conversation or such a discussion without saluting our martyrs, because each and every one of them has led us to this moment. That is part and parcel of our developmental projects and plans that came because of the security and stability we are witnessing today. Before we move on with our discussion, let's have this quick break and we'll come back for more discussion.